The hall in the old marble complex on the edge of the city had been booked 18 months in advance. Crystal chandeliers hung in perfect rows above round tables dressed in ivory linen. Fresh jasmine garlands looped the pillars, releasing their scent every time a ceiling fan turned. Guests arrived in pressed silks and starched sherwanis, phones already out for the ritual photos. It was 4:17 p.m. when the qawwali singer paused between verses to let the bride's entry music begin. Aisha stepped through the double doors at exactly 4:22. She wore a lehenga the color of pale rose quartz, heavy Zardozi work catching the light like scattered embers. Her dupatta, edged in gold thread, floated behind her as two cousins held the train. The groom, Haris, stood beneath the mandip in a cream ochkan, smiling the nervous smile of someone who had rehearsed this moment in his head 1,000 times. Their eyes met across the carpet of rose petals. For a few seconds the room felt suspended, perfect, expectant, whole. The first phone screen lit up near the back. It was a notification, then another, then a quiet wave of vibrations rippling through pockets and purses. Heads tilted downward. Fingers swiped. A low murmur started, the kind that begins when someone drops something fragile and everyone pretends not to notice. Haris noticed first. His best man, Zain, leaned in and whispered something short. Haris's smile froze, then cracked. He looked toward Aisha, who was still walking, still smiling at guests, still unaware. The qawwali singer faltered mid-note. Someone had turned the volume down without asking. By the time Aisha reached the mandip, half the hall was staring at their screens instead of her. The video was 37 seconds long. It had been sent through a dozen group chats in under 90 seconds. No watermark, no face blurring, just clear enough that doubt was impossible. It showed a bedroom, plain white sheets, a wooden headboard, afternoon light slanting through half-closed blinds. A woman who looked exactly like Aisha moved with someone whose face stayed off-frame. The audio was muffled but unmistakable. Soft laughter, whispered names, the rustle of fabric. The clip ended abruptly, as though cut from a longer file. No one shouted at first. That came later. Aisha reached Haris and lifted her gaze. She saw his face and knew something was wrong before anyone spoke. Her smile slipped like wet silk. "What?" she asked quietly. Haris didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat worked, but no sound came. Zain handed him his own phone, screen already playing on loop. Haris stared at it for 3 full seconds, then looked up at Aisha again. The question in his eyes was so raw it seemed to pull the air from the room. The aunties near the front began whispering furiously. One of them clutched her dupatta like a shield. A cousin of the groom stood up, chair scraping loudly, and walked out without a word. Phones were passed hand to hand now, not discreetly anymore. Someone laughed, sharp, disbelieving, then clapped a hand over their mouth. Aisha's mother, sitting in the first row, felt the shift before she understood it. She rose halfway, then sat again, confused. Her brother leaned over and showed her his screen. The color left her face in stages. First cheeks, then lips, then the skin around her eyes. She looked at her daughter standing under the floral arch and saw not the bride she had dressed that morning, but a stranger wearing the same clothes. Haris's father stood next. He was a quiet man, a retired school principal who spoke slowly and never raised his voice. Now his hands shook as he took the phone from his wife. He watched 10 seconds, then handed it back without expression. He walked to the mandip, placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and said only 2 words, "We go." Haris didn't move. Aisha reached for his arm. "Haris, listen to me." He stepped back. Not violently, just one small step, but it might as well have been a canyon. The garland around his neck suddenly looked too bright, too celebratory. The qawwali singer had stopped entirely. The harmonium player stared at his instrument as though it might explain what was happening. Someone in the back started crying, soft, hiccuping sobs that spread to 3 other women. Then the groom's younger sister, barely 19, stood up. She had been filming the entry on her phone for memories. Now she pointed the camera at the mandip and said, loud enough for the microphone to catch, "This is real. This is happening right now." The video she was recording went live to her followers. Within minutes it appeared in other stories, tagged with the wedding hashtag they had chosen months earlier, #AishaWedsHaris. Chaos doesn't arrive in a single moment. It seeps. Guests began leaving in waves. First the distant relatives who could pretend they had urgent calls. Then closer ones who couldn't bear the silence. Aisha's father remained seated, staring straight ahead, hands folded so tightly the knuckles whitened. Her mother tried to reach her daughter, but the crowd between them had thickened with people trying to exit. Aisha stood frozen under the mandip. The dupatta had slipped from her shoulder. No one fixed it. She looked at Horace and said his name again, softer this time. He met her eyes for the last time that day. There was no anger there yet, only a stunned vacancy, as though someone had reached inside and removed the part of him that knew how to feel. He turned and walked down the steps. His father followed. His mother stayed a moment longer, looking at Aisha with something between grief and confusion, then she too left. The hall emptied faster after that. Aisha remained standing. Her cousins tried to pull her away, but she shook them off. She walked to the edge of the stage, picked up the microphone that had been left on the stand, and spoke into it. "I don't know who sent that," she said. Her voice cracked on the first word but steadied. "But it's old. It's from before I met him. Before I promised anything. I never lied to Horace about who I was when we started. I told him everything." The remaining guests, perhaps 30 now, stared up at her. Some recorded her words. Others simply watched, caught between pity and judgment. "I didn't make that video to hurt anyone," she continued. "It was private. Someone kept it. Someone waited for today. Whoever did this wanted this moment to break." She looked around the hall, at the half-eaten plates, the wilting flowers, the empty chairs. "You all saw it. You all decided what it means before I could speak. That's the part that hurts more than the video." Her voice broke completely then. She dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a metallic thud and feedback squeal. She sat on the edge of the mandip steps, lehenga pooling around her like spilled rosewater, and cried the way people cry when the world has already moved on without them. Outside, Horace sat in his father's car in the parking lot. The engine was off. No one spoke. His phone buzzed continuously. Messages from friends, relatives, people he hadn't seen in years. He didn't open any. His father finally said, "We'll go home. The rest can wait." Horace nodded once. Back inside, Aisha's mother reached her at last. She sat beside her daughter without touching her. After a long silence she said, "I didn't know." Aisha wiped her face with the edge of her dupatta. "I know. You should have told me. I tried." Words didn't come. They sat like that until the staff began clearing tables. The jasmine garlands had started to brown at the edges. 2 days later, the families met in a lawyer's office. No cameras, no phones allowed on the table. Horace arrived with his parents. Aisha came alone. Her father had refused to attend. The discussion was brief. The Nika papers had never been signed, only the civil registration remained pending. Horace's father spoke for everyone. There would be no marriage. No public announcement. No blame placed in writing. Just quiet separation. Horace looked at Aisha across the polished wood. She looked back. Neither spoke. After the meeting, Aisha drove to the old marble hall alone. It was empty now, decorations already half dismantled. She stood in the center of the floor where the mandip had been and closed her eyes. She could still smell the jasmine. She didn't cry again. Instead she took out her phone, opened the group chat where the video had first appeared, and typed one message. "I'm not hiding anymore. But I'm also not explaining anymore. Whoever kept that video for 3 years and chose today to send it, you got what you wanted. The day is ruined. The people who mattered are gone. If that was revenge, congratulations. It worked." She sent it, then blocked every number in the thread. Months passed. Horace moved to another city. He took a job teaching history at a small college. He never spoke about the wedding day again, not even to his closest friends. When people asked why he wasn't married, he said simply, "It didn't work out." Aisha stayed. She changed her number, moved to a smaller apartment across town, and started working freelance as a translator. She stopped wearing rose quartz. She stopped attending large gatherings. Sometimes, late at night, she would open her laptop and watch old family videos, not to remember the good times, but to remind herself that pain doesn't erase everything that came before. The person who leaked the video was never identified. Rumors pointed in different directions: an ex, a jealous cousin, a former colleague, but no proof surfaced. The clip itself disappeared from most phones quickly. People deleted it out of shame or fear of being seen with it. But memory doesn't delete. Years later, in a quiet cafe on the other side of the city, Aisha ran into Zain, Horace's old best man. They recognized each other instantly but didn't hug. They sat at separate tables for a while. Then Zain walked over. "He's okay," Zain said without preamble. "He's teaching. Has a dog now. Doesn't talk about it." Aisha nodded. "I'm okay too." They didn't mention the video. They didn't need to. Zain left first. Aisha stayed, watching rain streak the window. She thought about the hall, the garlands, the moment Horace stepped back. She thought about the 37 seconds that had outlived the vows they never took. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel something close to forgiveness, not for the person who sent it, but for the version of herself who once believed privacy could be permanent. The wedding never happened. But the story did. And like all stories that begin in joy and end in silence, it taught the people who lived through it that some wounds close, but the scar remembers the shape of the blade.